Welcome to Logical-NDE. My name is Emily, and it is my pleasure to narrate the near-death experiences of those who have seen the other side. If you are new to our channel, welcome. For our regular viewers, please sit back and enjoy today's episode.
Hello, and thank you for allowing me to be here to share about my near-death experience. My name is Maria Lupita Gurule, and I am from Santa Fe, Nuevo Mexico, Santa Fe, New Mexico, USA, in the Rocky Mountain area. I am going to talk today about two very different experiences, and the first one occurred 23 years ago, just about, on June 5th, 2000, almost 23 years ago. And the second one I will talk about occurred just about 6 months ago on October 3rd, just this past year in 2022. These two experiences are absolutely profound and life-changing. And the first one occurred, as I mentioned, on June 5th, 2000, on the day that my second child was born. I had two extremely incredible, difficult pregnancies. The very first one resulted in a premature delivery of my son. And the second also was occurring with the same complications. I had toxemia, is also medically known as preeclampsia. But that condition quickly culminated into an extreme situation that is life-threatening for both the mother and the child. And it transitioned into a condition or a syndrome called HELLP, HELLP. And that stands for hemolysis, elevated liver enzymes, and low platelet counts. And the only way to cure it is for the delivery of the child, even if the delivery and the child is premature. So I went in for a stress test on a Friday, and it was discovered that both myself and my daughter in utero was under distress. I was scheduled for an induction, not a cesarean, but an induction to be induced in my labor the following Monday. So I was sent home on bed rest on Friday. Because I had two such extreme life-threatening pregnancies, it was discovered and determined that my body really could not handle a third pregnancy. So with that in mind, I went into the delivery on Monday morning with also the expectation of having surgery, planned surgery that afternoon for a tubal ligation so that I could prevent myself from having to become pregnant in the future and another life-threatening condition for myself and the child. When I went into the hospital, I was prepped for the delivery as well as for the surgery. So I was given a catheter for an epidural. And an epidural is basically just to help soothe and kind of alleviate the pain of the delivery. Because it was induced, I had a very quick and hard, fast labor. So oftentimes when women are able to go through a natural process of slow dilation for them to have the birth, when you're induced, it's really extreme and fast. So I was given an epidural, and again, in preparation for the surgery later that afternoon, I was going to be given a spinal block. So earlier before the delivery, the catheter was inserted into my spine. Again, it's right about this area of the spine, and it's really just to help alleviate the pain. And in an epidural, there is what's called the dural sac, and there is a specific lining that helps protect all of the nerves from inside of the spinal cord. That's what sends all of the signals to the brain that actually helps our whole entire body function. And so for an epidural, I was given anesthesia just outside of that dural sac, just to help alleviate the sensations of that quick and fast birth. I had my daughter with no problems, no complications whatsoever. It was a very peaceful delivery in complete contrast to my first child. It was really peaceful and actually quite calm, and I got to spend about 3 hours with my daughter. She was born at 12:42 in the afternoon, and the surgery was scheduled just about 3.5 hours later, about, just about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. When the doctor came in for the surgery, again, the catheter was left inside of my back, and so that they could just insert the needle for the anesthesia. And this time for the surgery, I was given a spinal block. And the difference between an epidural and a spinal block is that the anesthesia is given inside of that dural sac. So they actually puncture into the dural, the dural sheath, and then actually give the anesthesia from that point down of the spine. Its intention is that to completely block all pain signals from that area and that extremity down. So I was supposed to be 100% awake, alert, and totally conscious through the entire procedure. It was only to numb me so that I would not feel the physical sensation of the surgery itself. The anesthesiologist was in the delivery room. And at that moment, my mom was holding my daughter. So I was being prepped for surgery in the delivery room. So we hold a pillow when you actually arch your back, and the anesthesiologist is inserting the medication. Well, while that was happening, I started to feel a very strange sensation, like I was no longer able to breathe and my consciousness going out. The last thing that I recall was the anesthesiologist asking me my maiden name at the time, saying, "Miss Martinez, are you okay?" I remember last looking over and seeing my mom hold my daughter, and that was the last thing that I remember. What happened is I had a reaction to the anesthesia, which is one of the complications, and I actually had to sign a waiver for that procedure to be done. It stopped my heart and my lungs from from breathing and my heart from beating. That while they were wheeling me out of the birthing room and down into the hall, because the operating room was actually on a different floor in a different area of the hospital. So I was in the maternity area. And so they were wheeling me out of this area into another part of the hospital while all of this chaos was happening. The next thing that I remember consciously was seeing somebody being wheeled in front of me. And I thought that was so odd because I did not recognize that it was me. So there was sheer chaos of them trying to stabilize me while en route to this operating room. I had to be intubated, where they insert through the trachea all the way down, and so that they would actually be able to breathe for me. I also had to be resuscitated to get my heart to beat again. While this was happening, there was just this fear and utter chaos, and I had absolutely no connection or attachment to my body. The next awareness that I had was being inside of the operating room, and there was a lot of chaos. I remember that somehow in the chaos, a tray got knocked over, and there was a lot of just disruption and trying to stabilize me. The last thing I recall is that I was hovering over my body, but it was as though I was looking down over my feet. So my head over my feet and just started to hover above. And in my NDE, I didn't feel as though I was traveling anywhere. I had no awareness, no connection to my body, and had just this awareness of, well, that should not be happening. I had this distinct feeling of floating and feeling as though I was moving, but nothing was in transition. It was as though there was a pinpoint of light in the central place inside of the room, and the entire room began to be consumed in this white, brilliant light. My next awareness was being in this other, most incredible place that was of the purest and the most brightest white. It was like greater than 1,000 suns, but it did not burn nor did it affect my eyes. I could see vastness and just this vast space everywhere. And I could hear this singing, but there was no songs or voices. I could hear this melody, like this song, but I could feel it through its vibrations. It was like I was immersed in this sea of liquid sound and light. It was the most beautiful, most calming sensation that I could ever, I have no words to describe it. It was this unimaginable love. If you can imagine this unconditional love on this earth plane and then multiply it infinitely, is what I felt. And then from this place, I just had an awareness of this presence of these beings with me, but did not, they did not fully take form. It was one really in particular, and I want to call it an angel, and another that was very subtle near it. And in this vastness that I could see, realizing that it was the most loving, most connecting, I felt like I was home. It was an extraordinary, amazing infusion of this hmm, most loving energy that we could ever possibly imagine. And through this place, I began to see larger than life, this sheer image of what is the Blessed Mother. I could see, but it was transparent and translucent, but yet it still had form. And I could see the silhouette of her so beautifully and so distinctly. And I was envisioning her heart center, and from her heart center, I could see both these beautiful flowers as well as these thorns. And as I'm peering through it and trying to see, it was though there was this red and this blue flames that were like swirling and dancing together. And through it, I could see this pinpoint, that same white that was so piercing that it, like what I would want to call the God center of the universe. I knew that to be where we originated, the place of God. And as I was looking through all of this and noticing the both immaculate and sacred hearts of that of the Blessed Mother, and then also of Jesus, that even greater than she, through her also transparent, I could see the intertwined hearts, and I could see this grand silhouette of Jesus. So the Blessed Mother, his mother, these entwined hearts, and um, I knew it to be this sound and being explained that that is the ambient Christ conscious spirit, which has nothing to do with religion. It is far greater than words to condense and to make it small. It has nothing to do with the religions of the world and of the planet, but of this divine energy that we are all part of and just don't understand. From that place, I knew that with them in front of me, that wow, what had just occurred to me, that I was now on the other side, that with them in front of me, with this most beautiful energy, that there was even more distinctly this communication that I have not shared up to this moment, that it is so deep and so personal, the communications between these two most divine sacred beings, that I still hold and cherish that in my heart. And that I really do feel that after 23 years, it's now time to begin to bring that information and messages to the world, because it's time and people and souls are finally ready for it. So from that initial experience of them, I was given these two beings that were still present, and I want to call them angels, and whether I call them guides or angels, I knew them to be somehow assigned to me, that these beings that ushered me through and to arrive in this sacred place, and then these other beings now present, which is It's difficult to describe because it is as though that there was one with me and with me always through this entire process while I spent these 8 minutes in heaven. It took approximately 8 minutes for them to wheel me out of the room from the time that my heart resuscitated, stopped and my lungs stopped, my heart stopped, and then to be resuscitated, intubated was approximately 8 minutes, but was like an infinite amount of time on the other side. To see the infinite within those 8 minutes, and that these other beings came now in my presence, and I knew it to be one, but then there were three aside from this one, that somehow they would like join and intertwine and we become one, but there were these three aspects, but it felt like three individual beings. I could sense and feel them as they were individual, but also knew that they operated as a unit. And there were four very distinct processes that happened to me while I was on the other side. That while this communication between the Blessed Mother and Jesus and the Christ consciousness and the purity, the Christ consciousness of what we are all infused in, this sacred source of unity and oneness, that I was given a process of these other beings now being present. I know this is complicated, so bear with me. Every time I recount these, it feels as though I am present in that space, in the present moment. It's like I am still present there on the other side. I straddle between these two places. And as I recount it, it's like I am there, but also here to be able to convey the information. So, with these three beings and this fourth with me always, that I had that life review, being able to look at things that had occurred in my life that were extremely painful and difficult to comprehend. It was like we were traveled to this other location for this process to happen. It was as though with thought and mind that like the location would move, but we would also move simultaneously, and that it would transform, that everything was translucent and did not have what shape and like buildings per se, but I knew that there were very distinct areas, and I could see from a distance different beings and what looked like very distinct lights. And in this particular location that we arrived, it was this life review area and a technology indescribable. It was as though being able to step into a platform that was fully and alive of this living energy, that I can pull up like a living library that had like all of these in the fourth dimension, I guess all of these slides of time and splices of time through an eternity, and I could move them forward and backwards like a filing system, and being able to separate and like identify the segment I wanted to look at. And it was also in front of me on this platform, but then I could also somehow cast it up and be able to see it in front of me. And with these beings being able to give counsel, being able to see these different parts and understanding how human minds perceive, and that how we fixate on the experience. When I was able to cast up on the screen, at a moment I was able to also like engage with it in live real time. I was even given an experience of having to switch the consciousness of the other being so that I can experience what they went through from their perspective. I was processing some very difficult experiences, and like majority of people on this planet, we experience horrendous abuses and atrocities of enormity that is literally like a type of soul murder. And we create these ways of living that somehow are like broken because we fragment in these events and these trauma events. And I was being shown how to assimilate, understand the experience from the soul's experience, because when we are on the other side, we do not have the same emotion that we do as humans. That emotion is something that is really tethered to the human and the earth realm. and that there are layers of emotion within other systems within the universe, but not to the extreme and the extent in which we do on the earth plane. And so when we are on the other side, able to see and experience from a different, heightened, and enlightened perspective without the attachment or emotion, we're able to understand what occurred and why, and how a soul agreements are made between other souls, and for this intricate process of not only our learning, but our growth and application, and for expansion and ascension and all sorts of things. So I was able to go through those really difficult, traumatic, uh, extreme situations that occurred to have greater understanding. And in one particular, there was an extreme situation that I was not able to, it was like a short circuiting of the system. And as I was going through this life review process, I was also intermittently on three specific occasions having to process this trauma. Was taken to another location on the other side in heaven, like a healing temple. And this healing temple has, mm, again, very difficult to describe. So, with the intention of these other beings that are helping me through this process, calling forth these other beings that are the ones that are there for assimilation and helping to feel the energy of the soul self. So it was like, it felt like the entire experience, I was like in a physical form, but I knew that it was much more than my body. It's a way for my consciousness to have awareness of individuals, but they're pure energy. So I was taken to a healing temple that literally looked in my mind's eye like a most sacred, like Greek like temple where you would imagine columns. And in this environment, it was as though I could see all of the universe from this temple, that I could see galaxies and other cosmic things from this scape that I was seeing, and everything was golden. There was this liquid light that I knew to be of pure soul essence and energy. It was like a purity of being immersed into these most sacred healing fires, but not fire. It was like a liquid, but not liquid. It had form, but it could be felt, but it was the most condensed and concentrated, that while being immersed into this most healing pool of sacred life force energy, the God essence in this pool of light, being able to immerse myself. And as these things were healing, it was like percolating through me. Like I could, for lack of a better word, feel this sensation of cleansing and releasing of these imprints that had occurred while in life. And it was, mm, the absolute most healing experience that I have felt on one other occasion of the second experience that I will describe later. That golden energy is that life source energy, mana, prana, chi, whatever we choose to call that word, is that most sacred soul essence. So I was given this sacred healing on three separate occasions as I'm doing these life reviews. After that process occurred, there was another group of beings, again, one always with me, and then always these group of three. And so it seemed to just always have these groups of four. And this next that occurred was this wise counsel of being taken, again with thought in mind, the place moving while we simultaneously moving. And it's almost like what it felt like is some motion, but with thought. It's like everything would change, like we without um like the space would change, but I knew it was a different space. So I guess it's a way of even this living, breathing energy that is cooperative with divine intelligence. that a location can have divine intelligence and be cooperative with our own divine consciousness and arriving. Bear with me. It's complicated. And as I'm describing all of this, it really truly does feel in my mind's eye as though I am truly there. And so I am trying to describe it here in present time in the physical body while also being able to fully sense and feel it there as well. So, from the other process of the life review and the healing, these other beings occurred that was now about counsel. And there were other groups that came, but it was primarily a set of, again, the one with the other and another three, and the ones that were with the healing, and also the ones with life review, and three others that I was unfamiliar with were all there. The one that was always with me is now the one that was the primary one to now kind of guide this whole process. It was as though being taken into like a classroom, being having discussions, again, looking at different things, different experiences, different scenarios, having lots of discussion, understanding about it felt like being in university. It felt like being downloaded and given some of the most sacred knowledge of the universe. That there was these downloads, this massive amount of access to, some may call it, they know as the Akashic records. And Akasha means ether. It is a living, breathing vibration of the universe. The universe is alive and in constant motion and in constant creation and evolving. It is eternal. It is a living vibration that can be sensed and felt regardless of time and space. And I was being given this access and being shown and taught about life and what souls are, what we are, what the earth is, and given earth history and the sacred most wisdom that has been hidden, and what Jesus was here to help teach us, what his mother represented, and all of these great teachings upon the planet that have been taken and hidden from us. That I was being shown very specific parts of my life, but then I recognized in retrospect that a lot of what I was experiencing was also future events, looking at things in life in general, but with this grand plan and being shown the cosmos and our place in it. That from this, I had another view of what seemed to be like a location, but also that seemed to open up and now transform where I could see the entire expanse of the universe. I could see it from its original creation all the way to something I cannot even describe. That the this life force, and I could not see the end because again it's still being developed, it's eternal and ever creating. Being able to see the universe and our great place within it, that I was being given that moment of understanding why I even chose to incarnate, why we as humans choose to incarnate in the most difficult place, in one of the most difficult places in the universe for our soul's growth, and it was not intended to be this way. So I was being shown all of these different things and like sitting with a group as though like almost like in a board meeting planning, but then also being like I was contributing and participating in it. And then also having discussions and like somehow that I had released like a lot of the human imprints from the lifetime that I had and like elevated into this my higher soul self. And I was working with them interactively, like having downloads, re engaging, learning things, talking about things that experience, and then also planning for my return. So, from that experience of this council, and this happened intermittently, I was now with this final and fourth group. And again, one always with me, but an additional three that somehow seemed to join. And I was shown like our earth plane. I was shown from a distance how incredible we are. This blue gem floating in all of the universe, where we seem so insignificant, but all of the universe awaits to watch what's happening on the earth right now. We are going through one of the greatest evolutions of human history, that the only other time that this has ever occurred in our Earth history was some, 30,000 years ago, and even 250,000 years ago, even 300,000 years ago. The history of our planet isn't what we know it to be, and I was shown so many specific parts that now finally humanity is ready to hear it, and I finally feel the confidence within myself to share it. It's now time. So with this final group, I was shown the grand place within the universe, like being shown our galaxy within our cluster of galaxies, within our region and sector of the universe, and how all of this energy is available for us for our growth, and to finally be released from the heavy duality on the earth plane. I was shown, so this vast galaxy, but then also out of at another layer, that like with these vibrant colors in a sea of black, that had like all of the colors of the spectrum, and colors that I can't even begin to describe, in this cosmic web of energy. And that's why I call this the sacred living library. It is, I being told that I am a weaver of the web, of being able to be given all of those downloads, and being shown the impact that it has. I was taken to this most beautiful, from the grand galaxy view all the way down into, again, the macro, the big cosmic, into the micro, small. It was as though like this scape of galaxies and the evolution of the universe in this sea that looks like brain synapses in the mind, being brought down into this most beautiful valley, and it seemed to be like an earthscape, that there was these beautiful grasses flowing with this incredible sea of flowers. And I was standing on a small hill, and I could see these vast, and like in this valley, and this valley represented all of the soul planes of all of the souls within the earth plane. And I could see like these rolling hills at a distance with all these different colors of like shades of varying like greens and blues, that I knew that each one had its own little valley of souls, that every single soul within this one valley that I was standing on this hill to see, that every color of red and every variation of color of red, one just microscopically off, to see just how beautiful and unique we are in a sea of reds and oranges and yellows and greens and blues and purples and ultraviolet, that every single one of us were one of those flowers. And I was being told that somehow that I was going to touch every one of those flowers in this sea. And I didn't understand what that meant at the time. It was so magnificent and so beautiful that we were all swaying together, like, we would see like a school of fish or a flock of birds together. It was one of the most extraordinary things. From that, I had this sense and understanding of how vital the evolution of the planet is at this time. From that, I made an agreement that I would return, that with all of this information, with this downloads that I received, with my own personal guidance from this other place infinitely, that I would decide to return so that I could share, share what I learned and be willing to be a voice for the Blessed Mother, even for the Christ consciousness. And it has nothing to do again with religion. It has to do with this ambient energy and frequency that is of a higher vibration now available upon the planet. Just to put in a word to try to describe it would make it limited and reduce it. It is limitless. It is available to us. We have something so sacred inside of us. If we only could understand what that is. I was shown that we each have an a spark of that absolute divine source energy. There is a what I call the God spark, that life spark within us. It is an undilute piece of the absolute of source. And we are here incarnate on this earth plane at this time for the greatest evolution to help release the frequency of fear upon the planet because it is a foreign and false frequency that has trapped souls upon the planet, to usher in this new frequency that we are all meant to receive and assimilate to and evolve to. So, from seeing that soul and sea of beautiful flowers, being brought yet once more, that also seemed to feel like that also seemed to evolve into this pure place of white energy, that with this gentle breeze and the watching these flowers, it began to fade back into that original white scape that I first saw when I first arrived on the other side. That most beautiful, brightest, brilliant white. And yet again with the Blessed Mother and Jesus. As he faded away, I began to see her, and from this exalted, translucent, higher place, she began to take greater form and kind of solidify in front of me. And she began to, like, almost as though she was appearing in front of me, although she was already in front of me. She was taking on a more solid form. When I began to recognize, like from this brightness and this translucence, that she was not alone, as she was materializing in front of me, more humanistic or more of form than she was prior. That I could see her holding my daughter. Even though my daughter is alive, our souls are tethered on the other side. We don't end here and then somehow begin this new process there, that we are there while also here in this continued conscious stream of energy. It's only where our awareness is. So as I'm seeing this most beautiful, most sacred being in front of me holding my daughter, and then recognizing that now appearing or taking form beside her is also my mother, my mother. And the Blessed Mother holding my daughter gave her a kiss and then literally bent and gave my daughter to my mom. And in that moment, I realized, oh my God, I had a baby. Oh my God. And the panic set in. And in that moment, I had this connection of understanding the most sacred, divine, feminine energy that we are now bringing into the planet that is missing. That soft, unconditional, most beautiful, sacred love that transcends all relation. that most pure, held love represented by God Supreme, God, the mother energy, the creative energy. It is God the Supreme is that prime mortorial form of the womb of the universe where everything is created. That must also be in balance with God of the idea, the seed, and God, the womb, these two frequencies together, which create that duality. So, understanding that that is what's missing on the planet at this time. So, the Blessed Mother holding my baby, giving my daughter to my mother, and then realizing like my mom was outstretching her arms as though to me. And in my panic, I didn't have this grand releasing and this gentle passing back and like a fading. In my panic of, oh my God, I cannot leave my daughter on the day that she's born, I made that decision and I crash landed back into my body. It is as though I fell 10 stories and crash landed directly into my physical body and could feel every part of it and the intensity and the pain of it all. I could not move. I could not, and I was still intubated at this moment. And it felt as though I was being buried alive. I just recall very gently this woman's voice at the head of, like holding my head in her hands and whispering and just letting me know it's going to be okay. And the only thing that I could muster was a single tear from my eye. And then they fully released the intubation and I could breathe again on my own. I was stabilized, and so they did continue with the surgery. I did have the tubal ligation, and the procedure took approximately 45 minutes longer than was expected. That I had a lot of difficulty coming out of that experience, that they had to call my mom into the recovery room after the surgery had occurred. I remember just convulsing in my body, shaking, and just trying to acclimate back into my physical body. And my mom looking at me and just taking one look at me and saying, Mija, ¿qué pasó? Mija, what happened? And all I could do was cry and just tell her I didn't know. And then from there, I spent the next, well, the most intense 3 years of trying to make sense of what happened to me. I went through a most significant depression after that, and people could assume that it was, partially postpartum, but I know that it was also just the depression of being back and trying to understand what occurred and trying to process everything, that sense of connection and love that I felt on the other side that I assumed would be so readily available and here on this side, it was not quite so, that I still had to reinsert myself right back where I ended and still just keep going and then try to figure out how to now understand what was happening to me, because I could sense and feel things and I was having these intense flashes and nightmares and other things occurring that I could not understand at the time. And so I began to pray, and my religion, I was born and raised Spanish Catholic, and nothing could prepare me for the experiences that I was having because I could sense and feel loved ones and see and images and all of these things that were happening. And so I had to really learn and understand and seek a sense of peace first and foremost for myself. Was very selfish in my first trying to understand all of these gifts of the spirit, of trying to understand how this divine energy works upon the planet, just to help myself be able to survive and be here. And so I spent the next 23 years, quite literally, of learning how to acclimate to all of this that has occurred to me. So I spent 23 years working with my guides and angels, having major experiences, having downloads and channels. I've had out of body experiences, otherworldly experiences, experiences with other beings, interdimensional beings, getting these downloads and other off planet experiences, being shown what's happening upon the planet, all of the divine, sacred, hidden, and lost knowledge that was taken from us, and then now able to be here to convey. I discovered that after these 23 years, and especially after the experience that happened on October 3rd of 2022, that we are so much more. So I'm going to take a pause and just say thank you so much for allowing me to share this portion. And I will continue with the next segment of the SCAD heart attack that I had on October 3rd. That is a whole other layer. The first experience I had was really deep and steeped in religious content about karma and dharma and other things upon the planet. And what I've discovered is that we have a soul technology that has been lost and hidden. And this was what was shown to me in my experience in October. So I'll share that next. Thank you so much.
Thanks for watching today's episode. Please don't forget to give us a like and subscribe. We'll see you next time.